Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Family Office podcast, where we connect the most interesting thinkers, investors, and innovators across the family office and alternative investment world. I'm your co host, Colten Ratz, and the goal of this podcast is simple real conversations with the people who are shaping where capital and opportunities are going next. I'm joined today by my co host, the phenomenal Melonie Gould, the founder and CEO of Footprints Family Office Association, connecting family offices across Europe and the UK through curated events, deal flow, and community. And today's guest needs very little introduction. We're joined by Ian Morley, one of the pioneers of Europe's hedge fund industry. Ian is the founder and first chairman of AIMA, the Alternative Investment Management Association, and has been involved in more than 100 ventures spanning finance, healthcare, and emerging technologies across multiple continents. What I really appreciate about Ian is that he's lived on both sides, as the allocator deciding where capital goes and as the entrepreneur out raising it. He doesn't talk in theory, he speaks from real experience, real judgment, and real outcomes. Ian, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, and let's go ahead and jump on in.
Good. Well, thank you, Colton. That was a very kind introduction, sort of thing that if my parents were still alive, my father would have enjoyed and my mother would have believed.
But yeah, appreciate it. And Ian, you've been described as one of the pioneers of Europe's hedge fund industry. What would you say originally drew you into that world?
It was a process, really. I started my life as a physical commodity trader, buying, selling, assaying, hedging, so forth, then into precious metals market making, then into derivatives. And then I noticed how flexible and useful derivatives were, and they became, to a certain extent, the backbone, and they allowed the growth of the hedge fund industry, because without shorting, you can't really have a hedge fund, and therefore you needed an alternative derivative structure to create that. And I thought that was really an interesting approach to the market as opposed to the traditional long-only approach. And I thought it was an interesting place to be, a lot of smart people, a lot of fun, and maybe you can make some money.
Definitely. But yeah, founding AIMA, the Alternative Investment Management Association, was a landmark moment. What problem were you trying to solve back then? And do you think that that still exists today, or have we solved that issue?
There were two problems, one of which is solved, one of which maybe isn't solved. The first problem was we were treated in those days by the traditional fund management industry to a certain extent the way crypto is treated today. We were regarded as outsiders, dangerous, people who need to be controlled and regulated. I took a simple view that you don't fight City Hall, it's better you go in, and if they're going to regulate you, you draft the rules for them. So we needed global regulation, we needed sensible regulation so that the industry could grow, and I think to more or less on a global scale that's been achieved. The other issue, I guess, was the American issue. AIMA should really have been an American trade association, not a European one, because the bulk of the hedge fund industry was in the United States. And I used to go over to the International Committee of the Managed Futures Association, as it then was, and I would travel over occasionally once a quarter, and I'd listen to all the stuff about regulation in Washington. And there was a kind of view that America was the center of the world, which I think still exists, and that the rest of the world didn't really matter, and we were being ignored. So I thought, well, okay, fine, so we'll start our own party. And we gathered in Switzerland a lot of people from around the world, and we created a global trade association out of the UK, because essentially we thought, and don't take this the wrong way, we just thought that the American view was very parochial. It was entirely focused on Washington. It wasn't looking at the rest of the world other than a place to go and raise money. So we better go and do our own thing. And we did. And the rest is history.
Makes sense. Kind of going off of that, zooming out with the U.S. entering what it feels like a tariff-driven economic war. How do you think investors should be thinking about that?
Well, there's two ways. You can be very emotional and upset about it. You can do an analysis of history of whether these things work well or whether they don't work well. You could also just make a very close-minded focus and say, wherever the Trump family invests, I will follow.
Okay. And you've been involved in so many different ventures, from healthcare to blockchain. How do you decide which opportunities are worth your time? Do you have a process or kind of walk me through that?
Well, I would say there's an element of process around serendipity. So people come to me all the time with different ideas, different businesses. Some of them appeal to me emotionally, intellectually, and I sort of get drawn in like anyone else. I love listening to a good story, particularly if it's told by an articulate person. So I always listen. Then I think, is there an opportunity here? Then if there's an opportunity, I've got to think, well, is this a smart person? Is this a smart team? Have they found something which is going to be able to grow to a sizable scale where real money can be made? Are they doing something different from anyone else? Are they investing their own money? What are they doing? What is their approach? Why? What appeals to me about it? And can they explain it to me in one sentence in English that their mother would understand?
I like that. And kind of going off that, is there like one thing that really stands out to you more than, other aspects? Like do you invest do you invest mainly in people that you believe in? Or is it, like an idea that you really believe in that can make a lot of money? What do you think is like the main, if there's one thing you really look for, what do you think it would be?
I think it's fungibility of those two things. I think life is always about relationships, and at the moment, even though we want to psychologically fool ourselves, we cannot have human relationships with avatars. We have human relationships with humans. So I'm drawn to people, but people who have got smart ideas, smart products. So if you can bring the two things together, smart idea, smart person, smart product, great opportunity, then you get the basic ingredients, if you like, of the initial requirements for an investment cake.
It's a great point. Karen, kind of going off that, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think when I'm looking at deal flow, when I'm approached, I agree with Ian. It's always about the person or persons, if they're founders, and it's always the story. So when I'm helping them do pitch decks, I always say, well, there's no story there. So we're human beings and we use emotional intelligence to communicate. So if there's not something in the first three slides that, and again, I agree with Ian, if you can't articulate it in a sentence, or as I call it, a strap line, and it has clarity, then how are investors going to be able to, you need, in a pitch deck, you've probably got 30 seconds, in which to captivate them, if that. So you really do need to have the personality, the character, the strap line, the problem you're solving, and you've got to have that story, and you have to have the team behind it, and the rest, and then it's sort of, you're trying to, I think, reinstate and qualify exactly why you're there speaking to an investor and why you want investment.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's a great point. And I think, there is a lot of the times people only have, 30 seconds to a minute to really pitch their idea. How do you think in such a short amount of time that someone could really stand out to a family office? What do you think they should be focusing on when trying to get investments?
Ian?
Well, look, if you're given a very short space of time, your headline, yeah, if you give, it's got to be eye-catching, hasn't it? I have a solution to world pollution, and you can make money. Are you interested? So you've got to have a snap headline. Then you've got people's attention.
Definitely. Uh, Karen, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I just think, not so much these days, because there's not so much quality deal flow out there since COVID. I'm not going to go into the reasons why I think that, but I still get, let's say on average, 5 decks like today. I've looked at 5 decks today. I haven't got a clue what they do. And I read through it twice and I think, what is it they do? What are they solving? And I can't, and if you can't, if it doesn't go chazing, chazing, or wow, then I don't think it's something that you can continue with.
I think that's a good point Karen makes. If I don't see now, if you're bringing me a solution to a problem, I have got to be convinced there's a problem in the first place. And in many cases, people are solving problems that I don't see as a problem. So what do I need a solution for it? So I turn off.
That's a great point. Yeah, I completely agree. I think you guys both brought up great points. And one thing I was kind of curious, just from my perspective, if you were advising a next gen family office leader today, what kind of advice do you think you'd give them, or what would you tell them to watch out for in this environment?
I don't think it's changed over a millennium. Listen to everyone's story, but ultimately use your brain, not your heart, when making investment decisions.
Yeah, that's great advice. Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I actually think when I'm looking through a pitch deck, and then if I agree to go to the next stage to have an e-meeting or an in-person meeting, it's not always possible to have in-person. I'm old-fashioned. I do prefer meeting, face to face. I always, obviously, the great thing, and I have to resignate, if they're trying to solve a problem that's not even there, then how can you go any further? But I think a lot of the time with a lot of the when we go back to perhaps the new generation, and obviously I'm not a family office, and of course Ian has, he's got his legacy and also the next generations to hand over. But what I see now that I've started working with, so I know Ian's son Adam, and I've started to work with those that will, are our future, and certainly the future of those established family offices. I still think, they need very strong guidance from the top, from the matriarch. But I see a lot lately of having all these teams around them and all these, from trustees to all these other boards to all these consultants. And I think it must be very confusing for them, particularly if there's conflict.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, but yeah, kind of why don't we transition into the like the evolution of family offices? Ian, I know you kind of touched on this, um, but you've watched the family office landscape evolve for decades. What do you think? I know you said there hasn't been too many shifts, but if there is a big shift or any sort of shift you've seen in how they operate, what would you say is the biggest difference?
Well, the biggest difference is clearly that most modern family offices are self-made. It's not inherited wealth. In the past, it was almost exclusively inherited wealth.
And how do you think that changes kind of the landscape with how people are making decisions? Do you think that people are kind of, if they're first generation, do you think that kind of affects like how they're using their money, or like how I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to word this, but Do you think that their investment strategy is different if it's like a first generation family as opposed to like inherited money?
Uh, Generally, yes. Inherited money has historic expectations of lifestyles and all kinds of things. New money is probably prepared to take greater risks, probably prepared to go into new areas where more traditional money won't go, and it is much more dynamic. The difference also is whether there is still an existing business or if it's just accumulated capital. So some businesses, some families still have huge businesses they're running, which throw off enormous amounts of dividends. Other people, they've sold the business, they've gone public, whatever, they cashed out, and they are simply managing the money they have.
Okay. And kind of moving forward, so I've kind of seen uh, how important collaboration is with a lot of the next gen family offices coming up, and the importance of networking. How do you see events like Karen's Footprints Family Office Conference, helping foster trust and deal flow moving forward?
Well, they're an excellent conduit. I mean, this is a place where people can feel safe. It's a place where people can meet other families, different generations. You can listen to presentations and pitches, and not just presentations and pitches. I think increasingly in the family world, people want to look at a wider scope, levels of interest. So if you've accumulated wealth, you may want to look at luxury items, you may want to look at specialist items. They may be philosophical, they may be philanthropic, they may be health related. There's a whole broad range of things now that are the focus of families, particularly second and third generations. First generation makes it, second generation wants to save the world. And third generation usually loses it all.
Yeah, I had to laugh because I do see it an awful lot. I just think on that, I'd like to add in, it's a little bit different here, Colton, with family offices than it is in the States, and for Ian to shed some light on it. I actually find when I've been in the States and when I speak to USA family offices, as you know, I've got a very good network there. And I find that they really encourage and indulge collaboration, and it de-risk obviously the investments they're making. And like for example in New York, I do know quite well the top seven families, and indeed we've been very privileged at our Footprints Family Office conference in the summer to have the top seven with, not all at once, but we have had them. And they all know each other very well and they do collaborate on deals. And I just think, sadly, or I don't know, perhaps Ian could shed some light on that, is that culturally they don't tend, I think it's getting better, but collaboration between family offices is not so, I think, evident as it is in the States.
I think that's right. I think it's probably a cultural difference. Um, Brits and Europeans are probably somewhere between Americans and Asians. If you go to the Middle East, if you go to Asia, it takes a long time to develop relationships and build up trust. In Europe, it's a bit quicker. America, people come to the bottom line very fast. We've just sorted out our storage business, and we've kept 2 units, which we're going to center of Manhattan, and they're going to turn them into flats. Are you in? You just couldn't do that in Asia. And to a certain extent, you'd have to be far more circumspect in Europe. So the nature by which things happen is driven by the sense of that business culture.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys kind of shedding some light on that. And one thing I've noticed is kind of how big co-investments have been. And I think it's a little bit easier for people to co-invest with family offices kind of in the United States. Do you think that kind of has something to do with it as well?
Yeah, look, American offices are bigger, richer, and have more deal flow. So that is always strongly appealing, with the current exception. And that is, I am not making any dollar investments or any US-based investments in the current environment.
Awesome. Well, kind of moving forward, you guys both have such strong communities. What role do you think collaboration plays in the next chapter for family offices?
Oh, well, many of the deals I do with other families, and if they know more about a subject than I do, the first thing I do is pick up the phone to them and say, so-and-so's got on the phone to me this presentation, this is your field of knowledge. What do you think? Would you have a look at it? Because I'm not taking it a stage further till I get if it's outside my range of knowledge, I can use general knowledge, but I don't have specific knowledge. So I'll go to someone who's got specific knowledge that I trust to tell me whether, this is for real or whether I should pass.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I think it's always to de-risk something. Of course, you'd be silly not to pick up the phone to another family office when they might specialise in a certain area, and indeed had invested in that particular space before. In like on a little bit similar, I do have family offices that reach out to me, not just in the UK but Europe and the USA, who will ask me if I've come across a certain person who's actually approached them for investment, particularly if it's USA or I had one Swiss. I know them quite well. They were approached by a company within the UK, and they asked me, did I know them? I said I did not, and they said, well, could you shed some light? And I did. I'm quite happy to do some due diligence if I feel it's my space and I have the expertise to do that, and also to help, to show myself of being useful, of providing a service.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can give you a sort of an interesting version of that. You have to be very careful what you say about people today, because if you speak bluntly, you get a lawyer's letter. So I was called about somebody, and they said, can you tell me what you think of so-and-so? Are they, decent, honourable person? Can I work with them? And I said, I'm terribly sorry, I don't know that person. They said, no, you in their CV, you work together. I said, listen very carefully to my response. I do not know that person. Now you've got all the information you need about them. So it's a little bit like Mark Antony's speech over the death of Caesar. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. So sometimes you need to put people down without saying anything negative about them.
Yeah, I'd like to take on from that. There has been a couple of stories circulating on social media about a couple of UK family offices about certain activity, and I was approached by other family offices and a couple of ultra high network who had lost their investment, and I said, why have you approached me? I know them, so I'm happy to pick up a call. And they said, well, you know them well, Karen. I said, well, how did you come to that? They go to your event and you're on LinkedIn with them. I said, it doesn't mean I know them. It's not the same. I have many people that come to my events. I can't remember everybody. I do try to talk to everybody, but I'm not involved with them as a friend or a colleague or on deal flow. And there was one actually yesterday on LinkedIn. It was a New York family office. She does speak at my events on a regular basis, and she had made a comment about in New York about certain other, that it's becoming more apparent in New York about scamming family offices, and she used the word fraudulent with family offices. And I just made a comment that it happens not just in the US, but it happens Europe and London. So she said, well, would you like to name them? I said, I cannot. And when I spoke to Pamela about it, who Ian introduced me to Pamela, who's a top family office lawyer. She said you have no comment whatsoever.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've seen kind of a lot of those fake profiles as well, and it seems to be a ongoing problem. But yeah, another topic I really wanted to cover was kind of the advancements of technology and AI. So we're seeing kind of AI and digital platforms change everything, from sourcing deals to due diligence. How do you see technology reshaping the family office world?
Well, in multiple ways. First of all, you can invest in it, so it's an investment opportunity. You have to invest, I think, where it's going to be most applicable. So applications in medicine, I think, are going to be very fast, very straightforward, very interesting. Law, property, contractual arrangements, it's going to be dramatic. It's going to be a little less dramatic in the care home business, say, where I'm involved, because that's a person-to-person business. But it may speed certain manual tasks up for people. So there are some real aspects there. Then the question is including it in your own investment analysis, which that's already there. People who've been in hedge funds and people who've been in crypto, blockchain, we're using it all the time for fast analytical work. So it's not new. It's progressing. It's very useful. Is it a game changer? I think it's a game changer in a global sense, but I don't know that it's necessarily just in fund management a game changer. I think it's just another useful tool at the moment.
Karen, do you have anything to add?
If we're talking about AI, I think the world's just gone a little bit OTT with it. I mean, AI's been around for a long, long time. And obviously it has become more sophisticated. And I think, leading on for the big companies that have been they've invested in, which regards to these ridiculous valuations, is the bubble about to burst? I wouldn't be surprised. Do I think that it's enabled in family offices? I think they have always used certain aspects of AI and technology. And I have seen investing using AI platforms, investment platforms. I've seen a lot more of those, particularly coming out of places like Singapore and Dubai. I think for me in family office space, we have started a platform for our own events, a booking system, and we're starting to add some AI features, but it's been very time consuming, to say the least.
Yeah, I think thanks for sharing that, and yeah, I've kind of noticed the same stuff. Do you think, kind of going off of that, do you think AI can truly, like replace human judgment in investment decisions moving forward?
It already does. I mean, some systems are completely automated and are trading. They're pre-programmed, but they're fully automated. I mean, people are trading in a lot of markets now entirely on an algorithmic or AI basis. So it's not a question of will it happen. It's happened. I think the more fearful thing is AI going to make a decision on a drone which has got a bomb attached to it or a gun attached to it? This is a life and death matters, not just trading matters. So in the trading world, it already happens, or it exists. Hasn't yet happened in these other worlds because there are ethical considerations to make, and those haven't been overcome yet, but they will. It'll happen with consequences.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely scary to think about. But kind of going back, Karen, to some of the platforms, is there any platforms that you've found are very helpful for you? Um,
Well, during COVID, because I was pretty bored, I did have a look at a lot of alternative investment platforms in the USA. I went on calls with them, and there are two that I still talk to on a regular basis. I like to see how they're developing and what's new. And I try to I tried to set up one myself. I created it. But when we went to launch, I was advised by family offices and founders and people in that I wasn't I did have something, but I was far behind the curve. It just wasn't sophisticated enough. So I just shelved it. So I am looking at I'm inquisitive. I like to learn, and I've got one that's out of Mexico. I had a call with them last week, but they've moved operations to Miami, and I'm looking at what they're doing, and I've got a follow-up call. And I always like to feel that I'm not left behind, and that I do have some, I think, experience or knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, but yeah, kind of going back to where we were before. Where do you guys see the biggest gap right now? Between like investors and founders and fund managers. Um, yeah, you guys want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, fund managers are always optimistic about the market in which they specialize in. Investors generally need to be more pragmatic. Um, if you take the top 10 tech stocks in the United States, their combined valuation is greater than the annual GDP of the United States. If you look at their annual profits, there is just no comparison. They just don't match up to the valuations. If you take any EBITDA multiple that any rational person would apply to anything that isn't called AI or blockchain or crypto, they've got not just one naught at the end, they've usually got two noughts at the end. So that is, to my mind, totally unsustainable. So when people are talking to me about investing in these, I'm not going to do it because I cannot see any direction for them apart from down, and a big down. Now, having said that, when you get market dislocations, interesting things happen. Gold is probably overpriced, but it's probably worth buying. Gold miners are ridiculously overpriced and are probably worth buying. Platinum to gold historic relationship is out of sync, probably worth buying the platinum. Certainly there's some interesting things about using excess energy in places where they burn it off, gas, oil places, and use that directly to create AI requirement for energy, crypto mining requirement for energy. So dislocations create opportunities. It's just a question of then taking advantage of them.
That's a great answer. Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. Not because I like to keep on the good side of him, but it does help. I totally agree with what he says. But I've seen, in the short space of time that I've been in the family office space and doing my events and conferences and deal flow, because it was really good for me at one time before COVID. I mean, I was putting together a deal, at least, maybe two deals a month, at least one deal a month. Now, this year, I've only done two small deals. And there's lots of reasons for that. I think the deal flow is not, yes, there's more of it, but it's not quality deal flow anymore from what I see. And also we've got less, I think the appetite from family offices to investing, not only do I think, the word dry powder, I think it's pretty stagnant at the moment. And there hasn't been really, I think, much. I think in the last 2 years I've seen it that way. But I do see in the USA, I do see a lot of more inroads and a lot more, the market, a lot more buoyant in certain areas.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up, and I think that kind of going off of during these slow periods where deal flow does kind of slow down. How do you see being a family office kind of benefits from that with the patient capital. Do you think that's an advantage compared to, most investment firms, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, patient capital makes a big difference. Not being public, not having to do monthly, quarterly reports, not having to answer to shareholders. I'm yet to meet someone that sued themselves for making a bad decision. But if you're making bad decisions and you have a fiduciary responsibility to third parties, you can be open to litigation. So I think you have to look at the smartest investor in the world, probably Warren Buffett, and he's always invested long term. He's always taken advantage of dislocations in the markets, and he's done overall remarkably well by being patient, by being opportunistic, and by investing in businesses where he can see a long-term revenue growth. He's not too attracted by businesses that have got absurd valuations and no profits.
Yeah, that's a great point. Kind of transitioning off of that, Ian. So you've written. I was looking at your profile, and you've written Morley's Law of Business and Fund Management. Which law do you find yourself quoting most often? Would you say?
Yeah, thank you. Look, it's 100 laws. It was fun stuff I did, tongue in cheek. Probably the 10th law, like the Ten Commandments. And it's essentially one of, it's advice when talking to pension funds or to institutional investors, but essentially it says, when talking to any investor, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in those proportions. So listen more, talk less. The exact opposite of what I've just done on this podcast.
We appreciate you for it. But what habits or routines have helped you stay sharp through such a long, successful career?
Oh, being involved in diverse businesses, being involved with young people, and being challenged.
That's great, Karen. What would you say has helped you throughout your career?
When I came into this, I'm in it for the long haul. So I've been very patient. I learn, I listen. I'm a great listener, and because I want to learn, and I have a thirst for the industry of family offices, and they never cease to amaze me. They do entertain me, and I'm never surprised at anything I find or listen or hear. Mind you, you have to take some of it with a pinch of salt. But they also, I find the people when I came into family offices, I really enjoy their company. I find, sometimes most of them are very genuine. And I think they're very humble and modest. They're not like what people think they are. Just, ordinary people like we all are. But also very helpful. And, yes, of course, they want to do good in the world. That's when I created Footprints. It was all about, investing to do good, to make a difference in the world. But obviously, you've got to make some money too.
It's very well said. And I've seen similar patterns. Some of the people I've met in this industry are some of the best people I've ever met. So right there with you. And kind of going off that, what do you think's one piece of unconventional wisdom you think more investors should hear?
No. Well, it probably sounds a slight repetition of what I said earlier, but open heart, open mind, listen to the story, but don't invest through your heart. Use your rational brain before making any investment decision and giving up your money.
Yeah, it's great advice. And Karen, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, again, I agree. I echo what Ian says. But when I'm looking at pitch decks, and then I have a call with them or meet with them, I always say to myself, if you were this family office, Karen, would you invest all your hard-earned money in this? And if I cannot say yes with conviction, then I can't expect family offices to.
Yeah, it's a good point. Um, but yeah, do you guys have anything else to add? Other than that, I have a closeout section. So what I wanted to do for the closeout is I have three questions. So it's just kind of like a one word or one sentence answer, and we could just kind of do rapid fire. You guys could each kind of give your answer, and then um, I have like a closeout section. But other than that, do you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about?
Who's your audience?
It's all so I was in charge of sourcing the investors to go to the private wealth management summits at Marcus Evans.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, mainly my audience is all heads of investment from either large single or multifamily offices looking for new investment opportunities and alternatives. That's kind of been my target audience. And then I recently just launched a newsletter kind of focused on the importance of networking within the family office space, and it highlights a lot of the events going on within the space so people don't miss out on valuable opportunities. So like Karen's events are obviously very valuable within the space. So just highlighting events like that and making sure that families are aware of them, and if it is something that fits with what they're looking for, then they can reach out and attend and make sure that they're not going to miss out on any opportunities.
Can I just add in how we met, Colten? Colten,
Yes,
if you don't mind
please.
me telling, sharing, I didn't know Colten. He reached out to me a couple of years ago on LinkedIn, and you'd had a little bit of a difficulty with the company you was with, and you asked me, could I think applied for a job with me, but obviously you wanted to stay in the States and
Yep.
be fairly near your parents. And I said to you, well, I haven't got an office in the States, but I'm happy to try and help you. And the reason I did, if I reached out, if I took a call with everyone that reached out to me, I'd never be off the phone. But it was because you were so polite, and it was your story, and I believed in you. And then when we had the call, I liked you, and I made up my mind I was going to help you. So what I did, I just took your CV, I did a little summary, and I sent it to probably about 10 or 12 family offices near where you live at the time. And I have to say, what a great community. They came forward, as you know, they interviewed you, and you got your role. And so I've always championed you, and I think you're doing a great job. That's how we met, Ian.
Oh, great,
Yeah.
lovely story.
Karen's been phenomenal. I would not be where I am today if I didn't have the help of Karen, and she's helped me introduce me to some phenomenal people, and has really showed me the ropes in this space. So really appreciate her for all that.
No, you've done it. You can only, I always think you can open doors for people and help, because I remember how many people have opened doors for me, including Ian, and you show your appreciation. But at the end of the day, it's your journey, and I'm happy that you've invited me to be along with you.
Likewise, yeah, wouldn't want to be here with anyone else, and I'm very excited to get this podcast going, and having Ian on here for our first episode is such an accomplishment, and yeah, looking forward to seeing where this thing goes.
Thank
Oh,
you.
good luck with that.
Yes, good luck.
But yeah, thank you for that, and we'll close it out now with our closing action. So we got three questions. The way we'll do it is it'll just be like a quick either word answer. Some of them are like one word answer or a sentence. So Ian, you could go first, and then Karen. So one word to describe the current investment landscape.
Dangerous.
Stagnated.
Stagnated. I like that. A trend that excites you most in the family office space.
Giving back to the community from which you made your money.
Health and well-being.
So both great answers. One book or habit every investor should have.
Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah, me too. That'll be a holiday book for me over Christmas. I can't think of a book straight off my head, but I think I think you just need sometimes to believe in yourself. I often thought in this industry when I went in for many, many years that I felt I suffered from imposter syndrome, but I don't anymore. But I've still got a hell of a long way to go to learn.
Yeah, I think that's very common, and I think everyone kind of deals with that in their own way, and so important to keep moving forward and just trying to provide value however you can. But yeah, I really appreciate it. Those were great answers, and Ian, thank you so much, seriously, for hopping on and being our first guest. What I loved about today is you didn't just speak about investing. You talked about how decisions actually get made, relationships, alignment, and judgment. Karen, thank you as well. Grateful to be building this with you, and for everyone who's listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to follow the show, connect with us on LinkedIn, and share this episode with someone who you think would find value from it. This is Your Family Office Podcast, where relationships drive opportunities and conversations drive decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks,
Thank
Colten.
you. Ciao. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.